a couple of places or a couple of attacks that new atheists would use to attempt to discredit religion. First of all is through science. Now, in some respects, a lot of scientists, even those that might be theists of various persuasions, would argue that science should be done without reference to God. Right? That you're focused solely on naturalistic explanation. Now, certainly Christian scientists might incorporate some element of God being active in creating the world, diversity in life, etc. But in most cases, they are not going to evoke God in doing some sort of chemistry lab. They're not going to say, let us pray God that when we add this sodium to this water, it is going to ignite like it's supposed to. And so most of science, even among Christians, is done without reference to God. But with the new atheism, the emphasis was not just that science be done without reference to God, but that science disproves God's existence. Of course, the emphasis would be on the process of evolution being the way that life developed. So solely as a naturalistic approach, as an explanatory force. Also, for especially the new atheists, any sort of religious thinking doesn't accord with what most scientists think they would claim, and so it does not belong as a part of the public square. Any sort of notion of creation or intelligent design is foolish, it's not scientific, and it is backwards. Again, kind of continual emphasis on the idea of progress from the Enlightenment. Another way that atheists have attacked religion is by pointing out contradictions or examples of bad things being done by good people or being ordered by God in the Bible. Now, in this case, the irony here is that often they have found a helpful group of people in certain biblical study scholars. And so even within the field of biblical studies, there are people that would help this out. And so atheists have done for centuries. So this idea is not something new. And in fact, some of these things have been around for a long time. But pointing to places where there are apparent contradictions, calling into question different gospel accounts, places where the Bible apparently does not line up with history, and then also attacking places that supposedly support or condone evil. God ordering the death of women and children, or genocide, for example. God condoning slavery in the Old Testament and the New Testament. Now, in many places, there have been conservative biblical scholars who have responded to some of these things. But this continues to be a frequent approach to try and discredit religion. But it is also representative of a larger philosophical problem that has been around for a long time, and that's the problem of evil. Again, not a new approach by atheists, but essentially this question of how can a loving God allow evil? The reasoning has been around for a long time. Nobody would deny that evil exists, although, of course, we're back to that moral question again, if it's truly evil. But the idea of bad things happening, nobody denies that. Bad things happen. So the argument goes, if God exists, He is either unwilling, or He is unable, or He is unknowing. And so that if He's unwilling to get rid of evil, that means He's not loving. If He's unable to get rid of evil, that means He's not all-powerful. And if He doesn't know that evil exists, then He's not all-knowledgeable. Again, it's an argument that has a long history. But at its base, of course, is the assumption that an all-knowing, all-powerful, all-loving God must get rid of evil. If that's not the case, then the problem of evil falls flat. And so if you can find a reason why God would allow evil, then the problem of evil doesn't really become a sufficient attack. But the assumption is that we can know what God would or should do. And that's why this becomes a rather popular attack and one that is persuasive to some people. I'll find a place where attacks can be made, and maybe there's some justice in this. Right? The actions of Christians and Muslims. And things like hypocrisy or violence, totalitarianism or oppression. Now, other religions can be lumped in here too, but atheists, especially the new atheists, have tended to focus on the monotheistic religions. Hinduism and Buddhism, for example, are a little bit harder to attack, especially on the problem of evil. I mean, if you don't have a monotheistic God, then it's a little bit more difficult to use the problem of evil to discredit. But certainly, they have found issues with the cosmologies of certain Buddhists and Hindus. As I mentioned, what separates the new atheists from other atheists, or the strong, angry atheists from other atheists, tends to be their denigration of religion as evil. Religion must be done away with. And again, not all atheists are like that. Many just want to be recognized as a viable alternative, even though they might think that religion is backwards or something childish. Many atheists are not interested in getting rid of religion. Some new atheists, however, have even suggested that maybe there will come a time when certain religious people need to be forcibly removed from society, right? So you have that kind of that extreme. So why is religion such a problem for the new atheists? Well, one of the areas is that it is believed to be superstition. Religion is not rational, they would argue. It's not scientific. And because it is not scientific, it is keeping the Western world back from scientific advancement. That we could progress so much more as a society if religion would just be done away with. Religion is magical thinking. It's like believing in Santa Claus or the Tooth Fairy or the Loch Ness Monster. No rational person, they say, would believe in the giant genie in the sky. And so all these things hold us back. Religion is also a problem for new atheists because they believe it leads to oppression. Even among those religions that preach freedom, they would say the lived experience is oppression. Religions are about oppressing people. Forcing them to believe certain things, attempting to prevent them from rational inquiry. Religions oppress women and minorities, new atheists would argue. The all-white man, new atheists, would argue that it oppresses women and minorities. It oppresses those who would challenge the status quo. It oppresses children by forcing them into superstitious, magical thinking. A recent area of attack for some has been the issue of circumcision. And so there have been attempts to have, in some countries and even in some places in the United States, circumcision outlawed, even as an expression of religion. That is, forcibly mutilating a child without its consent. We've already mentioned violence being as a part of why new atheism increased. But the assumption is that religious oppression and religious violence work together. And so would argue that religions use violence against dissenters and minorities, against other religions, against indigenous peoples. And they would claim that most of the wars in history have been started or facilitated by religions and religious people. And then finally, another place that's a useful attack and a useful problem is the amount of division, especially within Christianity and Islam. If your religion is true, they would ask, and God has revealed it, why are there divisions? Why doesn't God just reveal which one is the right one? Now, in some respect, even the religious person, even the Christian, might have to suggest or agree that certain things, certain of these have been done in religion. Certain people have used Christianity and connected with magical thinking that God is kind of a slot machine or a soda dispenser. You put in the quarters, you push the button, it's going to take place. Have Christians been oppressive against people? Yes. Have Christians used violence against people? Yes. Have Christians divided? Yes. But simply the expression of these things, does that mean that the religion itself is the problem? Was it not Christianity and Christians that started the road towards science? Has it not been Christianity that actually worked for the liberation of people, of women and minorities? Has it not been Christians who have stood up against violence and promoted unity? So sometimes it's been the problem of religious people, but it's not necessarily the problem of religion.